The millionaire married a poor girl to save his empire, but she saved his heart. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It was a late autumn afternoon in Manhattan, the kind of day when the sky looked heavy enough to collapse on the city's tallest towers. Ward Industries, one of the most respected, privately owned corporations on the East Coast, was hours away from a decisive board vote that could change everything. Inside the top floor of the Ward building, Adrian Ward, the 35-year-old millionaire heir to the empire, stood alone in his father's old office. The room smelled faintly of aged leather and cedar, the same scent he remembered from the nights he spent here as a child, watching his father review documents until dawn. For the first time in his life, Adrian felt something unfamiliar creeping beneath his skin, the fear of losing everything he had been raised to protect. His father's will, written years before the old man's unexpected passing, had one final requirement. Adrian must be legally married before his 36th birthday in order to maintain controlling power over the company. There were only 30 days left. The legal team insisted there was no loophole, no extended clause, no hidden exception. If Adrian did not marry in time, the voting power would shift to the board. And waiting in the shadows of the boardroom were the members who had been silently plotting to seize control of the company his father had built from nothing. One of them was Rebecca Sterling, Adrian's former girlfriend and one of the most influential advisors in the corporation. She knew every weakness he had, every fear he hid, and she was not afraid to use any of it to bring him down. But this was not what troubled Adrian the most. What haunted him was the cruel irony. He could manage billion-dollar contracts, negotiate hostile mergers, and stand firm in front of the most powerful men in the country. But he could not think of a single person he trusted enough to marry, even on paper. He had loved once. It had ended with betrayal. He had dated since then, but every relationship within his world came with conditions, agendas, and unspoken motives. Marriage, even a contract one, required something he did not have anymore: faith. A knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant entered the office hurriedly and whispered that the press was gathering outside the building. A rumor had begun circulating about a breach in the company's internal systems, and reporters were pushing for answers. The timing could not be worse. The pressure was closing in from every direction, squeezing whatever air Adrian had left. He walked out of the building through the back exit to avoid the cameras, stepping into a quieter alleyway behind a small independent bookstore. He needed a moment to breathe, a moment to think, and that was when he first saw her. A young woman stood outside the bookstore, stacking a few donated books into a wooden crate. Her clothes were simple, worn at the edges but clean. Her hair fell loosely around her shoulders. She looked up when he approached, and there was something disarming in her expression. Not fear, not recognition, not the calculating curiosity he had grown used to. Just a quiet, steady presence. "Sir, are you all right?" she asked gently when she noticed the tension in his face. No one had asked him that in years. Before he could answer, a group of reporters turned the corner. The young woman reacted instantly. Without asking questions, she pulled Adrian inside the bookstore, closed the door, and guided him behind a shelf until the voices outside faded. She did not ask for his name. She did not try to take a photo. She did not even attempt to dig for information. She simply said, "You looked like you needed help." And in that moment, Adrian realized something he had not expected. The solution to his impossible problem might be standing right in front of him. A girl who had no reason to lie. A girl with nothing to gain. A girl who did not know she had just walked into the storm that could swallow both of their lives whole. This is where their contract begins. Or perhaps where fate had been waiting all along. Elise Miller did not know the name of the man she had just helped. She only knew he looked exhausted, cornered, and strangely alone for someone who carried himself with such quiet authority. After the reporters disappeared, she stepped back politely, giving him space as he adjusted his coat and caught his breath. "You did not have to help me," he said. "I know," she replied with a small smile, "but you look like someone who needed one calm moment." Her voice was steady, warm, and without judgment. It was the kind of voice that belonged to a person who had seen enough hardship to understand it without asking for explanations. Adrian felt something shift inside him, something he had not felt in years, a sense of being seen as a human being rather than a figure at the top of a powerful empire. "My name is Adrian," he finally said, offering his hand. She wiped her palms on her apron before shaking it. "Elise, nice to meet you." It was the simplest introduction, but it carried more peace than any conversation he had experienced in months. Elise returned to sorting books, moving with the gentle efficiency of someone used to doing everything by herself. Adrian watched her for a moment, noticing the way she treated every donated book with care, as if even the oldest and most torn volumes deserved respect. There was something grounding about her presence, something honest. When he finally stepped back outside, the cold wind returned to his skin, and reality crashed down on him again. The 30-day deadline, the board plotting against him, the requirement to marry, the impossible weight of every decision he had to make. But now, there was also a new thought building at the back of his mind, a quiet, dangerous possibility he had not allowed himself to consider before. Elise. For the first time since reading his father's will, he wondered if there was a way out of this nightmare, not through manipulation, not through a strategic partnership with someone who had influence or power, but through someone with no expectation, no agenda, and no desire to control him, someone whose honesty might actually save him. 2 days later, their paths crossed again. Adrian returned to the bookstore, hoping to find a few minutes of silence away from the chaos of his corporate life. Elise was organizing a new shipment of used books. She greeted him with the same gentle surprise as before, as if she did not expect him to return but was genuinely glad he did. "You look like you have not slept," she said, handing him a warm cup of tea she brewed herself in the tiny break room. "Here, this might help." He accepted it gratefully, and for a moment, he simply stood there, breathing in the warmth. "Do you ever feel like your life is moving faster than you can keep up with?" he asked quietly. "All the time," she admitted. "But I try to focus on what I can control. One small task, one small moment, then the next." End quote. Her words struck him harder than she knew. Elise did not speak like someone who lived an easy life. She spoke like someone who had survived storms and learned to keep walking. "What about you?" she asked gently. "What is weighing on you this much?" Adrian looked at her, realizing he could tell her nothing or everything. She would not use it against him. She would not leak his secrets to the press. She would not see him as a millionaire or a corporate heir. She would see him as a man struggling to carry the legacy of someone he loved. "My father left a requirement in his will," he said, "one that affects the future of my company." Elise nodded slowly, listening without interruption. "I have to marry," he continued, "or I lose everything he built." She blinked. "That sounds impossible. 30 days is not much time." "No," he said, "it is not." A long silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with unsaid thoughts. Elise absorbed the information with genuine sympathy, not the performative empathy he had grown used to in corporate circles. "That must be a lot to carry," she said softly. "It is," he admitted. Another pause, a breath, a shift in the air. And then, almost without thinking, Adrian said the words that would alter both of their lives. "Would you ever consider helping someone in a very unusual way?" Elise looked up at him, her eyes clear and steady. "What kind of help?" she asked. Adrian felt his heart tighten, because once he said the next sentence, there would be no turning back. "A marriage," he answered quietly. "A temporary one." The bookstore fell silent, and fate took its first, irreversible step. Elise stood perfectly still after Adrian spoke, as if the air around her had thickened into something she could no longer move through. A temporary marriage. The word sounded unreal, like something that belonged in another person's life, not hers. She looked at Adrian, trying to read the expression on his face, trying to understand why a man like him would choose someone like her for something so extraordinary. He did not rush her. He did not push. He simply waited. The same quiet steadiness she had shown him now returned to her. "Why me?" she finally asked. The question was simple, but her voice carried an honesty that could not be ignored. Adrian took a slow breath. He had prepared himself for many possibilities, but not for the intensity of this moment. He spoke carefully, choosing his words the way he chose his investments, with precision and purpose. Because you helped me when you did not know who I was, he said. Because you saw a person instead of a position. Because you have no interest in power. And because I need someone I can trust in a way that is not complicated. Elise's heart tightened. Not complicated. The phrase felt both flattering and heavy. She shook her head gently. This is a marriage you are talking about, she said. Even a temporary one. It is not a small decision. I know, Adrian replied, and I am not asking you to decide right now, but I want you to hear the truth from me, completely and without pressure. He stepped closer, still keeping a respectful distance. If I do not marry within 30 days, the board will take control of my company. My father built Ward Industries from nothing. He poured his entire life into it. I cannot watch it fall into the hands of people who want to tear it apart. Elise absorbed every word with a seriousness that surprised even her. She had always lived on the edges of wealth, never inside it, and the world Adrian described the politics, the strategy, the fragile balance of power felt both foreign and frightening. But she could see the sincerity in his eyes. The kind of sincerity that did not come from desperation alone, but from responsibility and loyalty. What would you expect from me? She asked quietly. A marriage on paper, Adrian answered. A real ceremony, legally binding, but temporary. 30 days. You would live with me, attend a few events with me, present yourself as my wife, so the board cannot challenge the legitimacy of the marriage. And after that, we part ways. And what would I get in return, she asked, not with greed, but with fairness. Financial stability, he said. Enough to help your mother. Enough to make sure you do not have to worry for a very long time. But more importantly, protection. Once you are my wife, the board cannot target you. The press cannot attack you. I will make sure you are safe. The room fell quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. He was not giving her a fairy tale. He was offering her a transaction. A necessary, imperfect arrangement that would save his empire and change the course of her life. Elise took a step back and sat down on a wooden stool near the counter. Her hands trembled slightly, but she folded them in her lap to steady herself. She needed a moment to breathe, to think. Adrian, she said softly, I do not know your world. I do not know how to behave at corporate events. I do not know anything about high society or charity galas. I am just a bookstore clerk. Or, you are more than that, Adrian said, his voice firm for the first time. You have a presence that people notice. You listen. You stand your ground. Those qualities matter more in my world than you think. She looked down at her hands. What if I embarrass you? You will not, he replied. And even if something goes wrong, I will take responsibility, not you. The vulnerability in his voice startled her. It was the kind of vulnerability men like Adrian were not supposed to show. Men who carried empires on their shoulders were expected to be unbreakable. But in this moment, he was just a man who needed someone to stand beside him, even if only for a short time. Finally, Elise lifted her head. I need to think about it, she said. Adrian nodded. Of course. Take the time you need. But please understand, I would not have asked if there was any other way. She watched as he walked toward the door. Before he stepped outside, he turned back to her, his expression anchored with sincerity. Whatever your decision is, Elise, he said, thank you for listening. The door closed behind him, leaving Elise alone in the quiet bookstore. She exhaled slowly, her heart still racing. The world she knew was small, steady, and predictable. But now, with one unexpected question, her life had opened into something vast and terrifying, and she could not shake the feeling that saying yes might save more than his empire. It might save something inside herself she had long ignored. 3 days passed before Elise reached out to Adrian. She had spent every morning opening the bookstore, every afternoon sorting dusty novels and old magazines, and every evening sitting beside her mother, pretending nothing in her life had changed. But inside her, everything had changed. The question Adrian asked lingered in every thought, every breath, every quiet moment. When she finally called him, Adrian answered on the first ring. I have an answer, she said. I am listening, he replied, his voice calm but tense beneath the surface. I will do it, Elise said, but only if you promise one thing, anything, that we respect each other, she said softly. No matter what the world says, no matter what the board says, no matter what happens between us. And Adrian did not hesitate. You have my word. The next morning, a black town car arrived at the bookstore to bring Elise to the Ward building. She had never been inside a corporate skyscraper before. From the moment she stepped through the revolving doors, everything felt overwhelming: the polished marble floors, the chrome surfaces, the tall windows revealing a sweeping view of Manhattan. The air smelled faintly of cologne and determination. Adrian was waiting for her in the private lobby on the top floor. When she stepped out of the elevator, he approached her with a quiet sincerity that eased some of her nerves. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," she admitted truthfully, "but I am here." That was enough for him. They walked together into a conference room where Adrian explained everything she needed to know: how the board functioned, which members supported him, which members wanted him removed, what documents would be filed for the marriage license, what events she would need to attend, and most importantly, how to protect herself from the press. Elise took notes, absorbing each detail with a focus that surprised even Adrian. He had expected her to be overwhelmed or intimidated. Instead, she approached every instruction with calm determination. At the end of the briefing, Adrian asked, "Do you have any questions?" "Just one," Elise said. "When do we tell your board?" "Today," he replied. They walked into the boardroom together, and every conversation stopped. 12 members sat around the long table, each one dressed impeccably, each one studying Elise with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Rebecca Sterling, seated near the head of the table, fixed her gaze on Elise with a cold, measuring look that tightened the air in the room. Adrian stood tall, his expression steady. "I have an announcement," he said. "I am getting married." The silence was instant, sharp, electric. "To whom?" one of the senior board members asked, adjusting his glasses. Adrian placed a hand gently at Elise's back. "To Elise Miller." Rebecca's voice cut through the room like a blade. "A bookstore clerk? Adrian, this is reckless. This is not the kind of decision a chairman makes under pressure." Elise felt her chest tighten, but she held her ground. Adrian stepped forward. "My personal life is not up for negotiation," he said. "The requirement in my father's will does not specify social status, education level, or corporate rank. It requires a marriage, a legal marriage, and that is what I am doing." Rebecca leaned back in her chair, her face expressionless, but her eyes burning with calculation. "Very well," she said, "but the board will require a formal introduction. Your fiancé should be prepared to participate in corporate events and public appearances." Elise swallowed hard but nodded. "I understand." The board dismissed them quickly after that, whispering among themselves as Adrian guided Elise out of the room. When the elevator doors closed, Adrian exhaled deeply, as if he had been holding his breath the entire time. "I am sorry they spoke to you like that," he said. "You cannot control how people react," Elise replied. "You can only control how you respond." Adrian looked at her, realizing again why he had chosen her. Elise was not intimidated by power. She was not fragile. She may not have money or influence, but she possessed something far rarer: strength without arrogance, clarity without calculation. When they reached the lobby, Adrian turned to her. "Elise," he said quietly, "I know this world can be intimidating, but I promise you, you will not face it alone." She met his eyes, steady and brave. "I know," she said. "That is why I said yes." And with that, the contract that began as a necessity took its first real step into something neither of them could predict and neither of them could turn back from. The days following the board announcement moved quickly, almost too quickly for Elise to process. One moment she had been shelving books in a quiet store, and the next she found herself standing in the penthouse apartment where she would soon live as Adrian Ward's wife, even if only for 30 days. The space was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. It felt like stepping into another universe. Adrian watched her as she quietly took in her surroundings. He could see the swirl of emotions beneath her calm exterior: confusion, responsibility, a quiet kind of strength. She was overwhelmed, but she did not show fear. She simply breathed through each moment, letting herself adjust piece by piece. "If any of this becomes too much," Adrian said gently, "tell me. I mean that." Elise turned toward him. "I will be fine. I just need time to learn this world." "You will not learn it alone," he replied. True to his word, Adrian made sure she had support. A stylist visited to help her choose outfits for upcoming events. Not flashy or extravagant, but elegant and understated to match her personality. A media coach held a short, simple session to explain how to carry herself during public appearances. Elise listened attentively, absorbing every instruction with quiet discipline. That evening, Adrian brought her to her first corporate function, a charity fundraiser hosted in a private rooftop garden overlooking the Hudson River. The air was cool, the lights low, and classical music drifted softly between the guests. It was a world Elise had never imagined, stepping into a world of tailored suits, glittering jewelry, and conversations filled with hidden motives. Adrian stayed close to her, guiding her gently through each introduction. He never pushed her forward or used her as a tool to impress others. He simply stood beside her, presenting her with the same respect he would give anyone he truly valued. "This is Elise," he said proudly as he introduced her to a group of influential investors. "She has a remarkable sense of clarity and strength. I am fortunate to have her in my life." The words startled her. They were not part of a rehearsed script. They came from him, naturally and without hesitation. For a moment, Elise wondered if he realized what those words meant to her, what they meant to himself. Rebecca Sterling watched from across the room, her expression unreadable. Her gaze lingered on Elise, analyzing every detail, every breath, every gesture. Elise could feel the weight of it, but she did not look away. She stood taller, steadier, refusing to let doubt seep into her posture. After an hour, Elise stepped out onto the edge of the rooftop to take a moment alone. The city lights stretched endlessly below her, shimmering like scattered stars. She placed her hands on the railing, letting the cool evening wind calm her racing thoughts. "I thought I would find you out here," Adrian said behind her. She turned slightly, offering a small smile. "I needed a break from all the questions." "People can be relentless," he said, "especially when they want something from me." "And what about when they want something from you through me?" Elise asked. Adrian paused, understanding the deeper meaning in her words. "If anyone crosses that line," he said quietly, "I will shut it down. You are my responsibility now, and I take that seriously." And the sincerity in his tone softened something inside her. She nodded, turning her gaze back to the skyline. "Do you regret saying yes?" Adrian asked, stepping beside her. "No," she said, "but I am trying very hard not to make mistakes." He looked at her, his expression gentle. "Elise, mistakes do not define you. What defines you is the courage to show up every day despite them." The words struck her deeply. She looked away to hide the emotion rising in her eyes. "What about you?" she asked quietly. "Do you ever make mistakes?" His jaw tightened slightly. "More than you know." Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. There was no contract in that gaze, no obligation, no business strategy, only two people standing in a world too large, too loud, and too complicated, finding a rare moment of silence in each other. A moment that did not feel fake at all. Before they returned to the event, Adrian reached for Elise's hand. He did not grip it tightly, nor did he expect her to hold his back. He simply offered it, gently and openly. She hesitated only for a second before placing her hand in his. The contract may have brought them together, but something far more real was beginning to take shape between them, something neither of them could name yet, but both could feel growing quietly, inevitably. The morning after the charity event began like any other, calm on the surface, but restless underneath. Elise woke early, preparing to attend her first official day as the new temporary CSR project assistant at Ward Industries. She chose a simple blouse and a tailored skirt that the stylist had helped her select, wanting to look professional without pretending to be someone she was not. When she entered the Ward building, employees stared longer than usual, whispering quietly as she passed. She felt their curiosity, their judgment, and perhaps even their skepticism. But she kept her posture steady, reminding herself of the promise she had made to Adrian: show respect, carry herself with dignity, and face every challenge head on. Adrian met her outside the CSR office. His expression softened when he saw her. "You look ready," he said. "I hope so," Elise replied. "I want to do this right." "You will," Adrian said, his voice steady and reassuring. "And if anything feels wrong, or if anyone treats you unfairly, you come directly to me." And Elise nodded, though she hoped she would not need to. She wanted to prove she belonged here, even if only temporarily. For most of the morning, her tasks were straightforward. She reviewed proposals for community outreach programs, sorted digital files, and familiarized herself with ongoing projects. The team treated her politely. though a few watched her with the quiet curiosity reserved for someone who suddenly appeared at the top without taking the traditional path. Around noon, her supervisor asked her to compile a set of documents for a meeting Adrian would attend later that afternoon. Elise organized the files methodically, double-checking every detail to ensure accuracy. She wanted Adrian to see that she could hold her own in his world. Once she completed the task, she placed the files into the shared CSR drive, unaware that someone else had been monitoring her digital movements from across the building. An employee from the information technology department, one secretly aligned with Rebecca Sterling, waited until Elise stepped away for her lunch break. With quick, practiced motions, he accessed the system, using Elise's credentials that had been quietly duplicated days earlier. He inserted a classified financial report into the folder Elise had just worked on, altering the metadata so it appeared she had downloaded and re-uploaded confidential material. The trap was set. When Elise returned from lunch, her supervisor approached her with a tight expression. "Elise, the board needs to see you in the conference room." Her stomach tightened. "Now?" "Yes," he said, "immediately." Elise followed him, her heart pounding with every step. When she entered the room, she saw the entire board seated around the long table. Adrian stood near the screen at the front, confusion etched across his face. Rebecca sat with her arms crossed, her expression cold and unreadable. "Elise," Rebecca began, her tone smooth but sharp, "we have a very serious issue." A large screen displayed her CSR folder. Next to it, highlighted in red, was the confidential financial document that she had never seen before. "This file was accessed and transferred under your credentials," Rebecca said. "Can you explain this?" Elise stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. "I did not touch that file. The system logs say otherwise," a board member commented. "I only worked with community project documents," Elise said, her voice trembling slightly but still steady. "That file was not there." Rebecca leaned forward. "Are you claiming someone framed you?" "I am saying I did not access that file," Elise repeated firmly. The tension in the room thickened. Adrian stepped forward. "Enough," he said. "Elise is not capable of this. Someone manipulated the system." "Do you have evidence?" Rebecca asked. "Not yet," Adrian said, "but I know her. She has no motive." Rebecca's eyes hardened. "Adrian, personal feelings have no place in a situation involving corporate espionage." The word hit Elise like a physical blow. Espionage. A crime that could destroy her reputation, her future, and her mother's safety. Rebecca continued. "The board recommends immediate removal of Elise from all company systems until a full investigation is completed. And," she paused for emphasis, "we question the legitimacy of a marriage that has occurred under such suspicious circumstances." In one swift motion, the board had not only accused Elise, but also challenged Adrian's ability to lead. Elise felt the pressure closing in from all sides. She looked at Adrian, who looked ready to fight for her, but that was precisely what terrified her. If he defended her now, he would face consequences that could cost him the company his father built. She took a slow breath. "I will step down," she said quietly, "and I will stay away from the company until this is resolved." "Elisa," Adrian began. She shook her head gently. "You cannot lose everything because of me." Her decision struck him harder than the accusation itself. And as Elise walked out of the boardroom, the contract that once seemed simple had just taken a devastating turn, one that neither of them could stop and one that would test not only their agreement but their hearts. Adrian watched Elise walk out of the boardroom, the echo of her footsteps fading into the long hallway. He wanted to run after her, pull her back, and tell the board that he would burn down every obstacle standing between them. But Elise's last words held him still. "You cannot lose everything because of me." It was the kind of sentence spoken by someone who loved without admitting it, someone who carried the weight of protecting others, even at the cost of breaking herself. As the board continued its discussion, Adrian no longer heard a single word. He stood there, fist clenched, pulse pounding with a mixture of anger and fear. Every moment Elise was away from him felt wrong, as if the room had lost its center. When the meeting finally ended, Adrian left without acknowledging a single board member. He walked straight to his private office, shut the door, and dialed his security team. "I want every piece of data from the last 72 hours, he said. "System access logs, account activity, device locations, everything." His team moved quickly, knowing that when Adrian spoke in this tone, there was no room for mistakes. But even as he waited, another fear began to sink in, one that clawed deeper than any corporate risk. Elise was alone somewhere in the city, carrying the blame for something she did not do, and he had no idea how much this humiliation had hurt her. He grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. Meanwhile, Elise had left the ward building through a side exit, keeping her head low as she walked down the busy sidewalk. She had not cried, she refused to, but each step felt heavier than the one before, as if the weight of the accusations pressed down on her shoulders. She had always lived a quiet, modest life. She had never broken the law, never caused trouble, never imagined she would be accused of something as serious as corporate theft. The shame of being judged in a room full of powerful people burned inside her. By the time she reached the subway, she realized she could not go home. Her mother would ask questions, and Elise was not ready to say a single word. So she rode aimlessly, letting the train carry her into the outer edges of the city where no one would recognize her. Hours passed. The sun began to set, painting the sky with muted orange and fading lavender tones. Back in Manhattan, Adrian stood at the head of his security operations center, watching as his team compiled data in real time. When the lead technician pushed a tablet into his hands, Adrian felt his stomach twist. "Sir, these logs show that Elise never opened the confidential file," the technician said. "Someone accessed her credentials remotely. This was a deliberate frame." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Who?" "We are still analyzing," the technician said, "but it appears to originate from an internal user with elevated access." It was the confirmation Adrian had expected, yet it filled him with a cold, burning rage. Someone had tried to destroy Elise to get to him, someone inside his own walls. He knew exactly who was capable of that. He left the operations center and walked straight to Rebecca's office. She looked up from her desk, her expression perfectly composed. "Adrian," she said calmly, "I heard about today's meeting. It was unfortunate but necessary for the protection of the company." He placed the tablet on her desk, the logs glowing on the screen. "You did this?" he said quietly. Rebecca did not even flinch. "I did what I had to do. She is a risk you cannot afford. And you are a risk I will no longer tolerate," Adrian replied. "Effective immediately. You are suspended from all internal operations until the investigation is complete." For the first time, Rebecca's composure cracked. "You are choosing her over us?" "I am choosing the truth," he said. "Something you seem to have forgotten." He left her office before she could respond, his mind already drifting back to Elise. He needed to find her. He checked the apartment, she was not there. He called her phone, no answer. He contacted her mother, she had not seen Elise all day. His fear grew heavier with every passing minute. Finally, approaching midnight, he received a message from his security team. Elise's transit card had last been used at a station near one of the small towns on the city's outskirts. Without hesitating, Adrian drove out of Manhattan, his headlights cutting through the darkness of the quiet suburban roads. The world outside his windshield blurred into shadows and streetlights, but his focus stayed sharp, driven by a single thought. He could lose the company. He could lose the board. He could lose every dollar in his account. But he could not lose Elise. Not again. Not like this. As he neared the small town where her card was last used, he slowed down, scanning every corner, every bench, every quiet street. Somewhere out here, she was hurting alone, and he would not rest until he found her. Adrian drove through the quiet outskirts with a focus so sharp it cut through the exhaustion in his body. Street after street passed beneath the tires of his car, each one dimly lit by old lamps and the fading glow of distant storefronts. The small town felt like a different world compared to Manhattan, slower, softer. But tonight it felt hollow, as if it were holding its breath. He turned onto a narrow road lined with small rental houses and faded convenience stores. His headlights swept across the worn sidewalks and empty bus stops. Then, at the far end of the street, he noticed a small cafe with its lights still on. He pulled over, hoping someone might have seen her. Inside, a middle-aged woman wiped down the counter. She looked up when Adrian entered, her eyes studying him carefully. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I am looking for someone, a young woman named Elise. She used the transit station nearby earlier." The woman nodded slowly. "She was here a few hours ago. Quiet girl, looked upset. She bought a tea and sat by the window for a while. Then she walked toward the park." Adrian thanked her and left, his heart beating faster. He drove toward the town's central park, following the winding path of streetlights, until he saw a small wooden sign pointing toward the walking trail. He stepped out of the car and followed the gravel path on foot, moving carefully through the stillness. The cold night air brushed against his face. Crickets hummed softly. The world felt too silent, as if waiting. Then he saw a figure sitting alone on a bench near the edge of a small pond. His chest tightened. "Elise," he called gently. She did not move. Not at first, but after a long moment, she lifted her head, her eyes tired but calm. She looked at him with the quiet resignation of someone who had already decided to let go. "You found me," she said. "Of course I did," Adrian replied, stepping closer. "I should never have let you walk out alone." Elise looked away toward the rippling surface of the pond. The moonlight reflected on the water, creating a soft silver glow around her. "I needed space," she said. "I needed to breathe." Everything in that boardroom felt like a storm I could not stand in. "You were framed," Adrian said firmly. "I have the evidence. I know exactly what they did." Elise closed her eyes for a brief moment, the tension in her shoulders loosening a little. "I thought so. But hearing you say it, it still hurts." He sat beside her, leaving a gentle distance between them. "This was never your fault. Someone used your name to attack me. They wanted to break us both." "M?" Elise shook her head. "No. They wanted to break you. I am just a convenient target." "That is not true," Adrian said. "You matter more than you think, more than I realized at first." She looked down at her hands. "Adrian, I do not belong in your world. Everything that happened today proved that." "No," he said quietly. "Everything that happened today proved that my world is broken. Not you." All. Elise did not reply, but the slightest tremor in her breath revealed the crack forming in her resolve. Adrian continued, his voice gentler than she had ever heard it. "I confronted Rebecca. She is suspended. There will be a full investigation. We will clear your name." "There is no we," Elise whispered. "I am not staying in Manhattan, not after this." His heart sank. "Eliza?" She finally turned toward him, her eyes shimmering under the soft glow of the street lamp. "I agreed to this marriage to help you, not to destroy your reputation or your company. If I stay, they will keep attacking me, and they will use me to hurt you every chance they get." "You are not responsible for their cruelty," he insisted, "but I will be blamed for the consequences," she replied gently. "Your world is full of people who will never accept someone like me, no matter how honest I am." Her voice did not carry bitterness, only truth. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his expression filled with something raw and unwavering. "Then I will remove every person who stands in the way of the truth, but I will not let you walk away from me because of fear." "It is not fear," she said quietly. "It is reality." Silence settled between them again, but this time it was heavier, weighted with everything unsaid. Adrian reached for her hand. She did not pull away. Her fingers trembled before resting lightly in his, as if she were allowing herself one final moment before making a decision she believed was inevitable. "Elise," he said softly, "I am not choosing my empire over you." She looked at him, startled. The determination in his voice was unmistakable. "And I will prove it," he continued. "I will clear your name, I will expose the truth, and when this is over, I will come back for you." Her lips parted, but no words came out. The night around them seemed to still. Elise did not say yes. She did not say no. She simply watched him with eyes full of emotion she was not ready to name. But for the first time since walking out of the boardroom, she let herself hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Adrian meant every word. In the days that followed, Adrian moved with a clarity and determination he had never felt before. He did not hide behind legal teams or public relations advisors. He confronted the corruption head-on. His investigators uncovered every line of manipulated code, every altered metadata entry, and every false login that had been crafted to frame Elise. The truth spread quickly through the internal channels of Ward Industries, and the board had no choice but to acknowledge the deception. Rebecca's involvement was undeniable. She had orchestrated the sabotage to weaken Adrian's influence and regain control of the company. With the evidence presented, she was removed from her role, and an emergency vote reinstated full authority to Adrian as chairman. His father's empire was, once again, firmly in his hands. But none of it felt like victory, because Elise was not there to see it. On a quiet afternoon, after signing the final set of documents that concluded the investigation, Adrian stepped into the elevator, descended to the ground floor, and walked straight out of the building without telling a single person where he was going. He drove for nearly an hour, leaving the steel towers of Manhattan behind and following the winding roads that led toward the outskirts. He returned to the same small town where he had last seen her. The sun was beginning to set, washing the sky in amber and soft rose colors. Adrian parked his car near the old footpath and followed the familiar trail toward the small pond. His steps slowed as he approached, his breath catching when he saw her. Elise sat once again on the wooden bridge that arched gently over the narrow edge of the water. The breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. Around her, the tall grass swayed in gentle waves. A few golden leaves drifted down from the trees, settling on the quiet surface of the pond. She did not turn immediately, but Adrian knew she had sensed him. After a long moment, he spoke. "Elise," he said softly. She lifted her head, her eyes meeting his with a mix of hesitation and calm. "You came back." "I told you I would," Adrian replied. "And I am here because everything you were accused of has been cleared. Completely. The board knows the truth. Rebecca has been removed. Your name has been restored." Elise exhaled slowly, relief flickering across her expression, followed by something deeper, something that had been locked away ever since the day she walked out of the boardroom. "I never wanted to hurt your company," she said quietly. "And you never did," Adrian answered. "You were the one person who protected me when you had nothing to gain. I should have protected you the same way." He stepped closer, but stopped a respectful distance away. "Elise," he continued, his voice low and steady, "I nearly lost everything trying to save my father's empire. But the moment you walked away, I realized I had already lost the one thing I could not replace." Her eyes softened, shimmering slightly in the fading light. "I am not asking you for anything today," Adrian said. "Not a promise, not a decision, not a future you are not ready for. I just want to tell you the truth without the contract, without the company, and without the pressure of 30 days. She waited, listening. "I lost you once because I was afraid of choosing between power and love," he said. "But this time, I choose you first." The leaves rustled gently around them. The world grew quiet, as if holding its breath. Elise did not rush toward him. She did not cry or fall into his arms. She simply turned her face toward the pond, letting the moment settle deep within her heart. And when she finally looked back at him, there was no bitterness left, no fear, only a softness that told him the pain had begun to fade. She did not speak. She did not need to. Sometimes, the answer is in the silence between two people who finally understand each other. The scene held there quiet, open, unfinished in the most beautiful way. A story not ending, but beginning again.